look at in this lesson is we're going to look at the organization of the EU. So where does its power derive from? How is it made up? Things like that. So as we look at the power structure of the European Union, what we're going to look at here first is this idea of the institutional triangle. The institutional triangle revolves around the European Commission, the Council of Ministers, and the European Parliament. These were institutions that initially created all policy for the European Union. As issues did become more entangled, the EU moved towards a government built on intergovernmental pillars. So the pillars revolve around intergovernmental cooperation with the European Council. So the idea behind that is that you've got leaders from every single one of the states that's part of the European Union that all have some degree of say as to what goes on and what policies are created by the EU. This is known as the community method. When we look at the European Commission, and we look at how that was originally created, the Rome Treaties gave the European Commission 3 major rights or privileges. It alone can propose community legislation in the form of regulations, directives, and recommendations. Laws are binding for all members in the same states, in the same terms. Laws that have been passed must be transposed into the language of the national legal codes. It supervises the implementation of community policy to ensure that member states carry it out, and it is the guardian of EU treaties, makes sure that the EU law is observed, and if need be, bringing member states and private bodies before the European Court of Justice to force compliance. So these are all the powers that really exist within the European Commission. So it's got a lot of powers that goes on here. The Commission can only initiate proposals where the EU treaties explicitly allow. So we can compare this, say, to American government, to where American government is based upon this idea of a federal structure. And there is power that exists at the central level, and there are powers that exist at the state level. And they each exercise a lot of those powers independently, but there's also some crossover that goes in between as far as how that power is shared between the two entities. When we look at that with the European Union, and we look at kind of that idea, is that it's very much a federal structure in the idea that the European Union has central power. The actual member states of the European Union kind of have their own powers as well, and there's some sharing, but when we look at it, the EU has the power to overrule a lot of the things that happen within those member states, very much how like the federal government in the United States has the power to overrule certain rules and laws and regulations that have been enacted in those states. So the Commission administers EU competition policies, they police state subsidies to industry, and they manage monopoly market powers and mergers. These were all things that the federal government in the United States would do, are the same types of powers that you see the European Union have over its member states. It also has power to administer the common agricultural policy. The Commission proposes rules for and administers the European single market and helps plan the growth of poorer countries. The European single market is the title of the EU's barrier-free economic space. So when we look at the people who run the European Commission, they're called commissioners. And they are appointed for 5-year terms by member state governments. So Great Britain appoints one, France and Germany, and all the other member states, they all pick a commissioner. There is a president of the Commission, and they are nominated by the European Council and are confirmed by Parliament. There are several vice presidents who help oversee the actions of the Commission. Okay, so when we look at that, they're nominated by the European Council, which we're going to talk about here in just a second, and they are confirmed by the Parliament because there is a European Parliament. The Commission's most important job is to design policy proposals and to get them passed by the Council of Ministers and the European Parliament. In most cases, it pushes the ideas of others and rarely works from scratch. So they are going to take ideas from all of these member countries. The European Commission is responsible for going out and finding these different types of legislation, crafting them in a way that's going to be beneficial for the European Union. And then it's their job to try and get those things passed. We also have the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers consists of foreign ministers, finance ministers, the President of France, and all the prime ministers of the member countries. So as you go through that, that's a lot of people that are part of this decision-making process in the Council of Ministers. The ministers meet regularly, generally based upon the type of job that they have and the types of job that they're going to try and do, and the heads of state meet every 6 months as the European Council. The President of the Council now has a 2.5-year term in office and is renewable once. The Commission may initiate legislation, but its proposals don't become law until they have been passed by the Council. Each country has a specific number of votes awarded based upon their population, so it is a proportional concept as to the type of power that each country has. We can also look at the European Parliament. The European Parliament holds plenary sessions in Strasbourg, France, and meets in groups and committees in Brussels. Their staff offices are in Luxembourg. So what kind of power does the European Parliament have? The European Parliament is directly elected, and the number of seats are allocated based upon the population of each state. So once again, we've got this proportional concept based upon how many members are the population of the member states. These elections are done at the local level. Okay, so as these elections are done at the local level, that means that the people of each state get to choose who their representatives are within the European Parliament. These elections are not held to the same importance that local national elections are held. So they're very much on kind of a second tier. They're not nearly as important. The Parliament elects its president and executive bureau for 2.5-year terms. The presidency usually alternates between socialist and Christian democratic. The president presides over parliamentary sessions, participates in periodic interinstitutional discussions with Commission and the Council counterparts, and they address member state leaders at European Council summits. Finally, we're going to look here at the European Court of Justice. The ECJ has the power of judicial review, something that we did not see when we talked about Great Britain. It's where we had that idea of parliamentary sovereignty where all of the power was very much vested in that one body. That is not how it works when we look at it with their membership in the European Union. The European Court of Justice has the power to overrule laws at the national level if they are not seen to fit with the agreements that have been made with how the European Union has been formed. So the ECJ has 12 judges, one from each member state. Cases are decided by a simple majority.